but I went to a space. I don't even want to call it a room, but it wasn't our space. There was no body. There was nothing material there. It was almost as if I was in outer space. It was black. There was no lights or anything. The only lights that emanated were from these three gaseous beings. I guess they were spirits, just the souls of these beings. Each one of them, they kind of flickered like this in the air. They all had different colors. They were interchanging colors. I knew I was home.
I'm happy to present Joshua Dean. Joshua had a near death experience when he was just a teenager hanging out with his friends, and he was hit by a vehicle. And he's come to share that experience with us today. Joshua, thank you so much for being my guest. I'm honored to have you and interested in hearing about what happened in your near death experience.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me about what happened. You were a teenager hanging out with your friends, and some friends were driving by, and something unexpected happened to you.
There's a little backstory to it. Before this happened, uh, I was I was only 16, and I was interested in learning how to see like the aura and things like this. So I was practicing strengthening the rods and cones in my eyes, and 15 minutes before this happened, I was looking over the tree lines because it was southern Ohio in the woods, dirt roads and stuff. So um, I actually was able to start to see some energy lines, and I consider myself, uh, especially then, close to God, and I just said a quick prayer, saying, Lord, I want to be able to see this all the time. And then about 15 minutes later, my friend was driving down the road, and then there was a hill, and a preacher driving his wife home from the hospital came up the hill as I was trying to wag, wave my hands around and trying to get the attention of my friend going down the hill. The car came up and didn't really, neither one of us had time to get out of each other's way. I had just watched, if you haven't seen this movie, when a 16-year-old boy really liked Jean-Claude Van Damme and the action movie Sudden Impact. And in that movie, Jean-Claude Van Damme is a martial arts guy, and a car tried to run him over, and that was fresh in my mind. And so Jean-Claude Van Damme tried to jump up, and he made it over the car, but I didn't. I jumped up and realized that I wasn't going to make it over the car, and I got fiercely angry because I thought maybe that I was, going to die. And I punched the hood, and at this time I was only about 120 pounds when I was 16 years old, and I left a dent in the hood, probably about this big, and I rolled over. Uh, as I punched the hood, the car was still driving forward. It spun me. My legs cleared the hood of the car and the bumper, and I ricocheted off the windshield, and I did a swan dive 20 feet the opposite way and landed right here and fractured my skull in three places. Um, and I was out. Um, I my friends, they were all just hanging in the front yard, so they watched the whole thing happen. Um, my friend Leo came, and he said that I wasn't breathing and there was no heartbeat. And at that point in time, I went somewhere else. I went through like a tunnel. But this is I could also say that when people practice astral projection and have out of body experiences on purpose, it's kind of the same thing. They say they go through a tunnel, so I think that's notable. It's something that, similarities there. But I went to a space. I don't even want to call it a room, um, but it wasn't our space. There was um, no body. There was nothing material there. It was almost as if I was in outer space, and but it was very. It was black. There was no there was no lights or anything. The only lights that emanated were from these three gaseous beings. I guess they were spirits, just the souls of these beings, I would say. And each one of them, they kind of flickered like this in the air, and they all had different colors. They were interchanging colors, kind of like your background there, those colors. And I knew I was home. I knew that I went home, to heaven, or whatever people call it, Valhalla, or yeah, Valhalla back there. I knew that's where I belonged or came from, and it was wonderful. Just the feeling of love and serenity. There was no contention. There was no question. That it was just known automatically. And so I was presented to these three beings, and I was like, this place is amazing. This is home, right? Everything was telepathy. There was no speech. There was no mouths. Everything was just back and forth through the consciousness. And they're like, well, yeah, but I think next was, well, can I stay? And they were like, no, you can't stay. You got to go back down there, and you got a lot of work to do down there, and you got to teach your mom something. And I argued with them. I didn't want to come back. I argued for my vista to stay, and they I said no. So I went back, and at this point in time, Leo had flipped my body over, and I think when he flipped my body over, because he was desperate and he was 16 as well and didn't know what he was supposed to do, I think that jolted me back, just made, like jolted the wind back into my lungs and probably kickstart my heart. I don't listen to Motley Crue, but kickstart my heart, I guess, has relevance. Then I was in and out of consciousness quite a lot. I was in a coma for 3 days after getting hit by a preacher, and woke up. I don't know if it was Easter or the day before, or the day after, but that was kind of strange. I couldn't count or say my ABCs, and had a little bit of a stutter there for a while. And I guess the brain damage lasted. It takes the brain 5 years to heal. That was a long process. It didn't affect my artistic side, because I sing and play guitar. And at that time I did a lot of artwork as well, sketching and painting, things like that. So that didn't get affected. It was more of the boring stuff don't really matter. But yeah, so that sent me on a long journey of discovering what reality is.
When you met those three beings and it felt like home, did those three beings feel like family or familiar to you?
It felt like everybody was part of the same thing. Yeah. And I grew up in a Pentecostal household. I mean, my grandfather's passed away, but he was in Kentucky. This was in Southern Ohio, but he lived in Kentucky, and Pentecostal churches down there, I guess, handled snakes and stuff. So like they were really into the Holy Spirit is that together. So um me and my friends and family had experienced some spiritual entities on the property that I grew up on as well. So at first it was like they were ghosts to me, but they didn't feel uh, malevolent at all. It was all benevolent, and but like I said, it was just peace and love. It was just radiated.
It's interesting that you grew up Pentecostal and then you had
Mm.
this experience. Did your upbringing change your beliefs or your views that you brought with you from your upbringing? Did those change after your experience?
Well, I was a my granny said I have a good heart. I'm just ornery. So I I started questioning things sooner than that accident. Because I'm Irish and Cherokee is so I, all these things that the Bible said or says, uh, stories are so amazing. They just they could be fairy tales, you know. But I believe I believe I believe in the fairy tales. So, um, but then I started looking into the creation story for the Cherokees, and that's pretty fairy tale-ish too, you know. And then all the practices that the Druids did before Caesar came and destroyed Gaul. Uh, the Library of Alexandria, some of the things that made it through there by mouth to mouth, they were all very outlandish and amazing. So I took it upon myself to try to experience these things myself, and I did experience things. So I started. If love is the only thing that lasts, then God shouldn't be mad at me for going and looking through other perceptions to find the same thing. So at first I had to contend within myself, am I doing something evil by looking through, these different belief systems? But I found that, for the most part, especially a lot of pagan stuff, that it seems as if the people that are in charge of information for the masses since maybe the Dark Ages have tailored it to where we cannot cure ourselves with herbal medicines and gain, um, of the kind of power over ourselves. And even the Dead Sea Scrolls and some of the books that King James took out of the Bible, um, it's kind of, we were getting cut short a little bit. So I think there's a scripture phrase: knock and the door will be opened. Seek and you shall find. Uh, I think those are really important, and treat other people how you want to be treated. And I think if you follow those couple of axioms, then you're probably going to be all right. God's not going to get mad at you.
Yeah, those are excellent pieces of advice. No matter what you believe, those are great things to live your life by. When you woke up, were you mad? Were you mad that you
Oh
left
yeah.
this beautiful place?
Oh, I was so mad. I was mad. I was angry. I was when I woke up, I had IVs hooked into my, my arms and stuff. I didn't know that I couldn't walk. So when I ripped everything out of me, I tried to run out of the hospital because I think my mother was there, and I told her, I said, I told you I didn't want to go to the hospital. I was telling them, I was like, don't take me to the hospital because I wanted to go back. I was just like, don't bound me here. And I got up. I got up and I tried to run out of the hospital, but I only made it like 6 feet before I fell because I couldn't. I guess my brain forgot how to do that. So I fell down, and then the nurses came and put me back in the bed. And I think this time they might have tied me down for a day or two until I woke back up, and they knew that I wasn't going to try to run out of the hospital.
Do you still have a connection to the other side or the beings or anything from your experience?
At different times of my life, I think it depends on what's going on. I've noticed being close, and I've also noticed being far away. So I just looked up the song that was supposed to be the first song that was ever written. I'm not going to remember it, but the name of it. But the words in English are "shine" and "have no strife." Because when you have no strife, you make sure that your life is in a way where you don't have to deal with drama and negativity. Then you are closer to where you're supposed to be. It's a really beautiful song. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was like in some different language. So
Did you develop any gifts like clairsentience or clairvoyance when you came back?
I don't know if I had it before that I feel like I did, but I definitely I got into energy work big time, and was able to pull pain away from people, myself, like headaches and things like that. And, I would often dream of things that are going to happen. Um, One of my friends I was really close to growing up, I knew when she was in trouble. Every time she ended up in the hospital, I had a dream she was in the hospital because she had pardon me, an illness. And I check on the hospitals, and I find her. Could often tell if somebody is going to have a bad day. If they were in my life, I could tell and maybe take a ride. I'm not sure what else. So my great grandmother from Ireland was a water witch, so she could find water with this with, with the rods. But back then they didn't have rods; they just had like a Y stick, you know, a stick from a tree that looked like a Y, and if it got pulled down, they feel it pulling down. That's where the water was. So I feel like on the Irish side, there's definitely some kind of gift there. That's definitely a valuable gift.
I find that it's really interesting. A lot of near death experiencers, when I ask them if they came back with any gifts or if they have any gifts now, often they'll say, well, I always had this gift, or I feel like kind of that I had this gift since I was born, but it didn't really develop until after my experience. And so it leads me to believe almost that everybody has all these gifts, and something happens during a near death experience that opens this portal up and makes us realize what these gifts are. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know how to summarize the human evolution in a short period of time, um, but it seems as if you look at the megalithic structures around the world, we either did it or we either did not. We either made those things or not, which means somebody else did. I'm kind of leaning that more towards somebody else did because we tried, there have been experiments with heavy machinery trying to duplicate the Great Pyramid and stuff like that, and it hasn't happened. Or the in Peru where the top of the mountain's cut off and there's Nazca lines. We can't do that. And the old axiom goes, as above, so below. And that didn't originate in the King James Bible. That originated with Hermes, as one of the principles of the universe that goes through everything you can possibly think of to discover things you don't know about. It's a principle of correspondence. As above, so below, but also so below as above. Saying that, I absolutely believe that we are created in the image of what created us. What created us has the power to create life. If you have the power to create life, what can't you do? You can do anything. We live in vibrations and atoms and molecules that can be scientifically proven now in this day and age, that it can be manipulated, you know? So what does that mean? Does that mean that if we have the right equation, we can manipulate the molecules and the atoms of a table and make it so you could put your hand right through it? Does it, I mean, is that possible? It's scientifically says that if we can change the vibration, we can probably do that and have cures for a lot of ailments, and maybe levitate 1-ton bricks and make big pyramids. Who knows? Sound and vibrations, I think, are very important. That's why the Buddhist monks have the mantras and the have you ever heard the Cherokee war cry?
I
You should.
haven't heard it. No.
Oh my goodness, you should look it up on YouTube. It's frightening. They the Cherokee women have this horrifying, screeching, almost monstrous tone, and you know they have the guys going around on their drums, and they're beating them, you know, boom, 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 boom. And then these ladies are, and it's, you get a group of them together, it's pretty haunting. And they have some recordings on YouTube. You should check them out. It's really like, wow. And that's some sound and vibrations, and that definitely delivers a response in your emotional being. Like, maybe I shouldn't be here, which is the intention, you know. So yeah, I just think that being here is a miracle for all of us. Having the capability of being able to talk back and forth, I think, is a miracle. And also evidence that there is a higher power that wants us all to be, that we are all one. You know? As above, so below as above, right?
Mm.
So that is, and I see that as a pattern between all of us. Which the only reason why we would want to talk to each other is because there's an innate love for one another, right? Which is the only thing that exists, the only thing that lasts. Everything else is ruins and rots and gets tore down, wars and pain and suffer. Everything else, that nothing else lasts but love. I think I'm supposed to say this, or I was told I'm supposed to say this by on part of my journeys as a young man. I'm 42 now, so in my 20s, I traveled a lot. I ended up moving. I lived in Brazil and Costa Rica. Traveled to Panama and Nicaragua, and when I moved back to the States, I ended up getting talked into moving into a little town in North Carolina called Waynesville, and played music there and everything. But then I realized that the Cherokee Reservation is right there. And then I was like, all right, well, this is why I'm here. So it's time to go there. So I went to the reservation and became friends with an elder by the name of General. and he probably has artwork still there and in the reservation and in Maggie Valley and things. He would make jewelry and stuff like that. And I wanted to be a part of a sweat lodge with a real Cherokee person because I growing up I adored the idea of Native Americans. Like when we had the toy soldiers of the soldiers and the Indians, I I had the Indians because it seemed nicer. I lived on Indian burial ground until I was 19 as well. It might have had something to do with it, but he told me he could see right through me. He knew me without knowing me. And one of the things he said was, did you die and come back to life?" I was like, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "Well, Jesus died and came back to life. And the only way in our belief system that you can become a shaman is if you die and come back to life." So I said, "What?" So he goes, "You're a shaman." And that really made me feel amazing. I was like my childhood lifelong dream is to sit around a fire and wear an Indian headdress and beat on a drum and be a shaman. And he said that uh, my my purpose is to tell as many people as I possibly can, which is why I agreed to do this interview with you. Um, that there is an afterlife, that this isn't it on this planet, and there is an intelligent creator, and but they called him the great, the great spirit. A lot of people fight over words, and we shouldn't. I'm a big fan of Tool. I love Tool the band. There's a song called Schism. I didn't know what schism meant, so I looked it up one day when the song came out. And it's a schism is just a difference in words about the same religious experience. So there's been a lot of people that have died and suffered horribly because of a schism. And I am friends with an older lady. She's got to be in her 80s, close to 90. And she was a little girl when World War II was going, and the Iron Curtain came down at her school. I can't imagine what that feels like. I almost want to cry about it right now. What it feels like to have people dying violently just a few feet away from you, and you're stuck behind this Iron Curtain. There's nothing you can do. That's not love. And that isn't how we are supposed to live. Even now, we get the same kind of stuff going on around the world. And it's basically because of schisms and greed.
Why did we forget who we are? Like you were talking about the pyramids and the Nazca lines and how we cannot recreate those things now. So that leads us to the two conclusions you said: either we built them or someone else built them. So why can't we remember as a species where our history comes from? Who built those? Was it us? Was there technology, or are there aliens that came down and built them, or whatever it is? Why is that blocked from us?
I think it comes down to I don't know how to, I'm gonna try to summarize this as quickly as I can. Uh, there needs to be a part two. If you go back to the old Cree Native Americans, but that predate Cherokees and the different tribes that we recognize now, And then there was another one before that. I can't remember the name of them. But if you do some research, you'll find what I say to be true. The Indian mounds and things like that, Serpent Mound up in Ohio, in Chillicothe, uh, is a huge effigy that people don't know who built them. But if you ask the Native Americans from that area, they say the ancient ones built it. And there was also, I mean, if you look back in the 30s, 1930s, the Smithsonian Institute had um, photography of a giant being on the table. There's a Serpent's Mound is on a hill, and then there's like a little cliff here. There used to be an altar down below, and they found a giant there, the remains of a giant. So that belief system, that's what they said happened. I wasn't there. I can't confirm or deny. But I do remember as a young person growing up in Ohio, a lot of articles in the newspaper talking about giants. There's even a place in Ohio called Giant Something where they have it's protected by the government, where they, those different sites around America where they have a sign that says with the title and everything. Well, this is one of those areas that is protected and noted as a historical place, and it talks all about this giant being. Now, if you look on in the Bible, it talks about Joshua killed the giant, and there's the Nephilim that can easily be transferred as the Watchers or aliens or interdimensional beings, very easily tied together with just different words. I would love to be able to sit with a scholar and that knows about these things and go on an endeavor to tie it all together. Like, I believe that I don't believe, but I think it's a strong possibility that, ancient Greek and like the Norse gods and a lot of the angels are all the same beings. Maybe Michael is Thor and Thor is Michael. They're just all these things that are thousands of years apart, thousands of miles apart, and tell the same story. Have to have some. There's got to be something there, and for people like King James that didn't want the world to know all this, the only reason would be so that for control of the masses, and that has worked for a very long time. But apparently, we were able of doing great feats before the Dark Ages took place. Nikola Tesla, that poor guy, like he came up with all these things that we use. He gets no credit. He got no credit for it. He was able to get electricity out of thin air, which I think, and also Coral Castle down in southern Florida. I don't know if you've ever heard of that place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this guy moved that. He moved those tons and tons of coral rock by himself, and he was like 5 foot. He was a tiny man. He said he figured out some of the secrets of the pyramids. He wouldn't tell anybody about it. Probably because if he told people about it, they would have thought he was insane and locked him up. We were made to forget. We were, like, it's kind of like what our governments are doing to us now, even in Brazil. And look what this hand is doing while this hand is doing something else. I mean, we have been bred and formed into a society that says you have to go to college and you have to be in debt to go to college, and then you have to work 9 to 5 every day or you're not going to have anything. And that doesn't leave any room for what Einstein said about imagination. Imagination is more important than intelligence, than all the studying you could possibly do. And that doesn't leave much room for that. It doesn't leave much room for an individual to sit down and write an album or to paint the Picasso. Not much room. So, but it does leave room for all your rights to be taken away. And it does leave room for our foods to be pumped with chemicals and genetically modified, and for the seeds to be taken out of the tomatoes and the fruits and everything, to where you can't plant your own food. It does leave room for all that kind of stuff to happen, because you got to work 40 hours a week. You have to, or you're going to be homeless or something. Yeah, I think that the great construct of our society has just been a big curtain, so that you can't see who you really are, what you're really supposed to do, and what's going on in the world around you.
Do you think people are starting to wake up? I feel
I think
like,
they are slowly.
yeah, there's a lot of talk about this great awakening and shifting into 5D and what comes when people wake up.
First, you have to have the time to experience a new realization. Like, I could show this to you right now. It's the beginning of energy work. Beginning of energy work. Rub your hands as fast as you can together,
Let's see,
and
I'm
then
gonna do it with you.
do it with it, and then wait till they're hot, kind of hot. It's getting a little hot, and then you stop and you don't pull them apart. Don't, but you can start to feel like a vibration between your hands. Now, as slowly as you can, try to pull them away, and you'll feel like an elastic rubber band in the middle. Like, no, don't pull me away. Don't. You can feel it. And then what I usually do is arch my hands, breathe, and then fill it with your intention, with your will. And you can feel that you just created a bubble, right? Now, that bubble, you just created something. As above, so below as above, right? And our creators, we just created something. So that, and I've read in old times that this can be filled with good or bad. Um, the Native Americans used to make energy darts like this. Like, they would act like they were throwing, like, had a bow and arrow, but they didn't have a bow and arrow. You know, that's so. Fill it with love. If you can do this all over your body. You can feel it all over your body. You can do this on different energy centers. We have 7 chakras. You can play with those. You can become aware of your energetic field of your body, and then you can practice on other people. When I lived in Costa Rica, I used to get free drinks like this. Like I said, Granny said I was a good boy. I was just ornery, but I uh, I would I would pick like 2 or 3 people, and I would go, watch this. I'll make this guy move without touching him. And they're like, no, you won't. And I was like, all right, you stand over there. You stand in front of me, and I will start my little game here. And I would do this, and I would build it up, and then I would be behind the person, and I would push and pull and push and pull the person in front of me. They couldn't see me because they were faced the other way, so they couldn't be tricked into doing it. The guy over here who was standing to the side, he would see him like leaning, like, very slightly, but it would work. It works. And then I get my free drink and be about my way. But then I would leave an impression on those people who are like, well, this guy's got something. Maybe
It's very interesting the way that energy works and how we are waking up as a species, as mankind, to just how powerful we are and who we truly are. It's amazing to watch it unfold. It's a very exciting time to be alive.
I think that I think that, like, ancient Egypt and the time of Gaul and Atlantis and things like that. I believe very strongly that there were many schools for this type of natural, whatever you want to call it. I believe that, I mean, they still do it. in the Himalayan mountains, you know, there's legends of, you know, I don't know if you know who Lobsang Rampa is. He was a famous Buddhist monk, and he had a book called Cave of the Ancients. And in that book, he described these machineries that were huge. It could help people with how that having an astral travel. There's a lot I could go off on what kind of theories is possible, especially with electricity. And you know, Tesla believed that Christ was catapulted from his body, and the crown of thorns was not really a crown of thorns. It was something that was flipped upside down to where the thorns were going in like electrodes. And when the lightning was going off, because that was during the storm, that electricity came, got him. I believe that there's all kinds of weird stuff out there that can be done that people have kind of, well, the powers that be have shoved away and said, you're not allowed to know about these things, because then we can't charge you every month for electricity. So in a sense, it's realizing it's a sombering experience when you realize that your slavery still exists, and that we are slaves to the energy grid and taxes and this, that, and the other. But there is hope on the horizon. It's not going to happen tomorrow, and but the stewards of truth and love will be greatly rewarded when we create the path for the rest of civilization to live easier and happier and be closer to the earth and take care of our environment, each other. You know, there's got to be an intelligent design behind everything, right? There has to be. So between good and evil, that when the white man came to North America and brought all these diseases and everything, so that in it, the Native Americans they didn't get sick very often, and that almost, to me, seems like that there was a higher power um, that wanted that to happen. So there's always a battle between good and evil, and I think that it just keeps going beyond our wildest imagination. That's why now I kind of, I'm more prone to believing in every religion, like even the old ones, the Sumerians, the ancient Greeks, and all that. I think there has to be truth to it. It lasted a long time, and they did some amazing things. They did more amazing things than we have in our short time here. We're only here for a little while, so I think it's better to learn from observation than from cutting your own finger off.
So that the stewards of truth and light that will be rewarded, is that in this lifetime or the next lifetime? Is it a different dimension in this physical planet? When would they see their rewards?
I think the answer would just be yes. You know, I think it's different for everyone. I think that I've heard, I'm sure you've heard of the Akashic records, and um, I have read. I can't say from where, that you agreed to it. You agreed to all the suffering and all the pleasures before you came here to this life cycle. So I think it's important to say this as well, that I've read I've read in an old belief system that consciousness is something that grows with each life cycle, even within a lifetime. But you start off as that that energy that projects out from the main source of everything that's created, shoots down You're created, you now have life, and you're a plant. Now now we've discovered that the trees and stuff can communicate with each other through the root system and stuff like that, probably through vibrations. I don't know exactly how, but that is a life cycle. And nothing in this universe is ever destroyed. Nothing can be destroyed. It can only be transformed, right? So that electromagnetic energy from that plant, when that plant perishes, goes back into the earth and back into our creator and gets kind of, I don't know, cleaned up or whatever, put on its best outfit for the next lifetime, and then becomes a plant again. And then there's many life cycles, and then the consciousness grows and then becomes animal, some kind of animal life form. And then that grows and grows and grows, many cycles, and then it becomes one of us. And then it was taught in the same old belief system, but I don't really want to say which one it was. But after us, we become and graduate towards something that we don't even know what it is, but I imagine it to be something amazing. Even in the Bible, it says that he was the God of gods. Automatically creates a problem with most modern Christians. Well, there's more than one God. It's like, yeah, well, it said it right there. Maybe you need to read it again, and read it again until you understand. That's what I have to do if I'm reading something that's a little kind of difficult, that out of my it's a little smarter than I'm used to understanding. I got to read it over and over again until it makes sense. And then
Is there any prerequisite to becoming a steward of truth, or is this something that anyone can do?
think, I think like I said before, the term that I used, I think was, uh, knock and the door will be opened. Seek and you shall find the answers. I think it says in the Bible somewhere close to the line of, all you have to do is ask and God will provide. Um, I think that's all it is. And uh, I also have a haunting um, uh, suspicion that it goes both ways. So there are there are people, there are beings that are here just to watch the world burn for whatever reason. And I think that there's been studies done that shows that all it takes is 10% of a population to get together and ask for something, and it like through meditation or prayer, and it happens. There has been a few what do you call it, tests that have been done,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out that it works. So if you know some spiritual friends, I feel very strongly that a lot of us can't find each other to make these big things happen, to get together and to talk about these things that we believe need to happen for the betterment of our world and mankind. I don't feel like there's a good platform for us to all. Maybe the internet works a little, but I don't feel like we're there enough. So uh, I'm a I'm a I'm a minister slash Christian slash Rosicrucian slash Freemason, right? So I've I'm sure that there have been some bad Freemasons. I think there's a lot of them in the government, and they've been able to pull power together to do things that we didn't need to have happen. But in my lodge that I was in, that I was raised in, did nothing but charity work for the community. and created, did like a for the children, like took fingerprints so we would know, we would be able to, if somebody went missing, we would that would help in finding them. Um, we had it every month. It's we found some charitable business to donate to, and that's just what I know about Freemasonry. So a lot of people are have a misunderstanding of them. So I would like to say what I know, but I'm sure there's some bad lodges out around the world. I'm sure there is. Uh, I'm sure that, just like any group of people, there's going to be good and bad ones, different races, different beliefs. I mean, we had a huge problem in the Catholic college. Um, I mean, that's horrible. So in order to weed through, you can usually tell when you meet somebody, unless they're really good at it. You can usually tell if they're for goodness or for greed and debauchery. You can usually tell. So I guess it's time to call to maybe I just spread a little seed here that it's time to call on the awareness of our spiritual brothers and sisters to start exercising that power within yourself, to start combing through whatever groups you have, and start being your own steward of collecting the people you think are ready to have a good impact on society.
Joshua, this has been so enlightening and wonderful for me. If my viewers wanted to reach out to you, would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll help any way I can.
How can they find you?
Um, you can find me on Facebook. One of my business pages is the Joshua Dean page. I'm a musician. You can find my solo uh, music work there and where I'll be. But it's a great place to try to get a hold of me. And you can also look up my music, my other music project page is called Element 7. So it's Element 7 Rock Band. You can look that up. And I actually have a little thing right here. It kind of looks like that. You can look it up.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. If you had one message that you wanted to leave with the audience today, what would it be?
I think the golden rule is not so shiny these days. So let's make the golden rule nice and shiny, which treat others how you want to be treated. The only thing that lasts is love, even through traumatic experiences, turmoil, hard times. A lot of time, if the only fuel you have is whatever form of love is in you at that time, or with you and another person, or your family, or your friends. Just love each other.
Beautiful. Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.